Hi, friends. This reflection is for the fifth Sunday of Lent, Year A. Every time I come across this account of the raising Lazarus of the dead, I cannot help but realize the fact that Jesus himself, there's a core belief here in this reading that Jesus wants our faith to come alive. I feel like today we live in a culture where spiritually people are dead. You're kind of surrounded by the walking dead. You're surrounded by spiritual zombies. And you're basically surrounded by them and you're trying to do what you can to fight them off, but eventually you can become one of them. That's basically what our culture is. Join or die kind of thing. But I think for Jesus is that he's preparing for what is to come, and that is the resurrection. He brings people back from the dead, born again, so to speak. We look at the case of Lazarus. Now let's look at it this way. Let's recap first the past 4 weeks. In the first week, we're told about our enemy, which is Satan. Next week, Jesus wants to transfigure our eyes. He wants us to be transformed. He wants us to be transfigured into his likeness by sharing that gospel. In the third week, he wants to talk to us. He wants us to listen to others and what their problems are. Last week, when we hear about the passage regarding the blind man who can now see, he wants us to have the faith and fortitude to share that faith with others. A call to evangelize, so to speak. As we look at the fifth Sunday of Lent, there's another message here. This message is to let our faith come alive. The Knights of Columbus recently put out a series called the Into the Breach, which is based on an essay written, or a church document written by Bishop Thomas Olmsted, who's now retired, of course, from Phoenix, Arizona. And I cannot help but really enjoy it. If you have not had a chance to read that document from beginning to end, it's worthwhile. Most of the things are happening, right in front of us. I think there's one thing we must understand about this passage from John is that I always think of what St. Paul said in his letter to the Romans. Those who are in the flesh cannot please God, but you are not in the flesh. On the contrary, you are in the Spirit, if only the Spirit of God dwells in you. For God, he wants our faith to come alive. He wants us to believe, just as Martha, who, if you recall, was very anxious that Mary Magdalene was having a front row seat to Jesus' teaching and preaching, and she was worried that she wasn't going to learn or get to know the Messiah. Here, we see that Jesus cared about his friends. Martha, Mary, and Lazarus were kind of like his best friends outside of his apostles. And of course, we also look at St. Luke. He does have a strong emphasis on women. But with St. John here, we see that also too, that Jesus does give life. And he said early on in the gospel that I come to give life and to give it abundantly. Now, for Jesus, he does that. He gives life to those who are dead. He's kind of, metaphorically speaking, Jesus is a lifeguard, but not like he has to. Well, he technically he does tread on water to save Peter, but we look at the times that he brings people back from the dead, he's kind of this eternal lifeguard, basically. He basically brings people back from the dead. Even in as we look at the first reading from the prophet Ezekiel, he foretells that these graves will be open and people will be brought back to life. That is the case with Lazarus, even though he's been dead for days. Every time I look at this, and I always think of this passage, this saying from the late Pope Benedict XVI. He reminds us that the question, do you believe this? And when Jesus talks about that he's the resurrection, Pope Benedict XVI said, it is a question that Jesus addresses to each one of us. A question that certainly rises above us, rises above our capacity to understand. And it asks us to entrust ourselves to him as he entrusted himself to the Father. Martha, of course, responds, yes, I believe. I've come to believe that you are Christ, the Son of God. We also believe. We believe in you because you have the words of eternal life. We want to believe in you who gives us a trustworthy hope of life beyond life, or authentic and full life in your kingdom of light and peace. The point of the rising of Lazarus, my friends, is that Jesus wants us to believe in him so we can be with him. And on the last day, we are being risen up. I always think of one of the most beloved church hymns in the Catholic Church, I am the bread of life. And in one of the verses, which actually breaks down a little bit of like borrowed from John's Gospel for today, is that he is the resurrection, and of course the exchange between him and Martha in the midst of it. And of course we go to the chorus, like, he will raise you up. I'm not going to sing it, so don't count on that, but you get the point. Friends, this passage too also reminds us that life is precious, especially Lazarus. But Jesus knew that we all will be with him. All it takes is to place our trust in him, to believe that he is the way, the truth, and the life. He is the resurrection. When we believe in him, we will never perish, but live forever, in and through him. 2 weeks out from Easter, friends. You got this. Never too late to turn your Lent sluggishness around. Don't give up. Be fully alive, friends, when all others around you are dead spiritually. Your faith, when placed in the care of Jesus, will resurrect those who are spiritually dead inside. I have seen that recently with a friend of mine. Even though he was spiritually dead, but when he asked God to come into his life, he's turning things around. I couldn't be even proud of him because he was, really big. He was really a good baseball player and what have you. And sometimes you never know what happens. When you grow up, you guys go your separate ways, and then you cross paths. Here and there, and then recent he like, oh, I want to come back to because he had his roots in the church and everything. I'm glad to see that. You never know who you can encounter that wants Jesus into their lives. You're not going to whack somebody with the Bible or anything like that. You just have to plant the seeds and ask those people to place their faith in Jesus. Your example can help someone's spirit come alive when you are fully alive. God bless. Believe in the Lord, and He will take care of everything.